but Larry Bird was cold.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think nobody ever could get out with him.
He talked trash against us, talked trash with against everyone else.
And I'm looking at this guy like, he's nuts.
There are players who dominate, and there are players who intimidate. And then there was Larry Bird, who was totally different in every sense. Larry Legend was the NBA's deadliest marksman in the tough 80s golden era. His game was absolutely terrifying, even to the game's greatest names. But who better can tell you about the man's dominance than the men that actually saw his greatness? Up close and personal?
The Boston Celtics have won the World Championship in 1980.
Isaiah Thomas probably learned this the hardest way possible. Game 5 of the 1987 Eastern Conference Finals, the Pistons had the game in their hands, seconds left. All Isaiah had to do was inbound the ball safely. Instead, Larry Bird came flying in out of nowhere, snatching the ball and firing it to Dennis Johnson for the layup.
Quickly, does to Lambier, stolen by Bird on the cut to DJ, yes! Yes, and a foul!
That single play swung the series and scared Detroit and Isaiah. Even though Isaiah would go on to have revenge in 1988, playing against Bird is when he admitted to being the toughest. For Charles Barkley, he never much admitted fear of anyone except when it came to Larry. Even he couldn't understand how the Boston legend talked trash and did exactly what he said.
We're sitting in the locker room getting ready for the three-point shooting contest. And I was kind of just talking to Leon, trying to calm him down, and we got all these three-point shooters in there. Bird comes in and says, "Which one of you is gonna come in second place?" So, like, which one of you gonna come in second place?
So first words through the door.
Which one of you gonna come in second place? Dan?
It was over.
I'm sitting around. Nobody said nothing. It was one of the best scenes I've ever, I'm looking around. I'm not in the contest, so I can't say anything. Nobody said a word. And I said, man, I wish we had casinos. We could bet on Larry Bird gonna win this three-point shooting contest. Because nobody said a thing. I mean, I was like, this thing is over. This is a wrap.
From one rebound king to another, Dennis Rodman was the heart of the Bad Boys Pistons defense. He basically prided himself on shutting people down. He was tough, relentless, and never backed down from anyone except Larry Bird, who had a way of breaking through even Rodman's armor.
On anybody in the world, and he put the trust in me. And I always told Chuck, I said, Chuck, just let me play. Let me play. I just want to do anything you want me to do. Just let me play. He said, Dennis, go call Larry Bird. And at that point, I didn't know who the hell Larry Bird was. I just thought he was a white guy that's in the NBA. That's about it. That's what I thought it was. The next thing they said, he reminded me, he said, Dennis, that's a legend. I said, all right, great. Now what? Now go out there and play, right? That's me. Go out there and play his ass. Okay, great. The more I play Larry Bird, all of a sudden now I got to figure out this game belongs to Dennis Rodman as far as defense and rebounding. And I became this such a phenomenon as far as that was my determination to go out there and stop the best guys, the best player on each team. That was my job.
There was also Michael Cooper, the defensive stopper of the Showtime Lakers, a man whose whole job was to make life miserable for the other team's best scorer. Cooper had quick feet, long arms, and a reputation as one of the best perimeter defenders of the 1980s. But against Bird, even he admitted it was a nightmare, and he always had to prepare extra before facing Larry Legend.
Jack, you know what? That was my sticking point when I got to the Lakers. Obviously, growing up here in California, Pasadena, what people don't know is that I was an offensive juggernaut. When I went to junior college, I averaged 26 points a game at Pasadena City College. Went to New Mexico, and I think I got changed right there. My coach, Norm Ellenberger, was a defensive-minded coach. I finally get drafted by the Lakers, and Jerry West came up to me, the late, great Jerry West. He said, Coop, we got Magic, Kareem, Jamal Wilkes, Norm Nixon. Ain't enough shots for you, so you got to play some defense. And that was my stronghold, and I stuck to it, and that was how I was going to stay there.
To get on the court, yeah. Greg Popovich told me that.
Still with the Showtime Lakers stars, James Worthy had faced every kind of superstar from flashy guards to dominant big men, but Bird was different. Big Game James remembered how arrogant Larry could be. The way he'd strut out onto the floor and tell you flat out what he was about to do, but he backed it up every single time.
And then you got that arrogant, cocky Larry Bird trash talking all the time.
And was he really arrogant? Was he really arrogant?
Well, yeah, he could back it up. So when you're arrogant and you can back it up, you're not arrogant, you're just good. And Larry was good.
One opponent that battled it out with Bird in the 80s was Magic Johnson. He was the other half of the greatest rivalry the game has ever seen. Magic could break down any defense, but against Larry, things never felt easy. Magic himself admitted Bird was the one guy he never fully figured out. They battled in 4 finals from college to the NBA, and even though both had their victories, Magic knew Larry was always his arch nemesis.
I don't think we understood Dan until after, you know, when they told us it was it had been and still is the #1 watch game in college basketball history. You know, we knew it was special because they were undefeated, and he was college basketball player of the year, and I was runner up to that, right? I think it was the first time, Dan, that 2 guys, the 2 best players met for the national championship.
But when did you realize you two were alike?
Oh, I mean, listen, I knew that in college. And then when we got into the pros, it just really put the stamp of approval on that the fact that we were so much alike. And then when we shot a commercial, because in the early beginning, we hated each other. You know, we had to, because he ended up on the Celtics, I ended up on the Lakers, and so you knew that there was going to be, hatred there, because the Celtics had beat the Lakers, I think 7 straight times, I believe. And so, and then we met, and then they beat us in '84. So I had to hate him. I had to hate the Celtics. And then when we shot that commercial, I believe in '87, at his house in French Lick, Indiana, that's when we became friends. And that's when we finally said, you know what, we're more alike than we are different, because we're both Midwest boys. We're close to our family. We also changed the game of basketball together, whether that was in college or the NBA. And then we always were about making our teammates better, right? We rather pass than shoot a lot of times. And so 2 big guys that can handle the basketball, that would do anything to win. And so, I love Larry Bird. That's my man. And
if Magic was scratching his head, Dominique Wilkins was losing his mind. 1988, Game 7, Hawks versus Celtics. Dominique was on fire, putting up highlight after highlight in probably the biggest game of his life. But Larry Bird dropped 20 points in the 4th quarter alone, outdueling the human highlight film in his own showcase. Dominique later admitted Larry didn't just beat you, he embarrassed you.
In Game 6, we should have won that series in 6 games. Tough shot at the end of the game that got the win for them. And Bird, at the end of that game, made a bold prediction to the press that, Atlanta blew their opportunity. I'm guaranteeing a win in Boston. And I remember seeing that article, and I remember we in Boston, we coming out of the locker room, and I stopped, and I said to my teammates, I said, we gonna win this bleep game. If you ain't ready to fight, you ain't ready to go to war, don't come out. I said, whoever go into me tonight gonna have a long night. Unfortunately, Larry Bird was telling his teammates the same thing down the other end. But it's set up for one of the greatest shootouts in the history of a 7th game. And I just never seen anybody hit shots like that down the stretch of a game. And we went.
Reggie Miller was pretty much embarrassed when he tried to trash talk Larry Bird during his rookie year.
Before that game actually happened, so Larry was out maybe 2 days ahead of time for these pickup runs. And Larry walks in, right? So you have the Lakers, you have the selection of pro players, UCLA A and B team. So of course Larry says, all right, I want to be on that,
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was breathless. The skyhook king, the man who seemed unstoppable, actually had moments where Bird flat out outworked him. Kareem called Bird relentless. That's not a word Kareem threw around lightly. Bird would run the floor, contest shots, dive for loose balls, all while calmly draining jumpers in Kareem's face. He didn't have the size, but he had the will, and sometimes that was enough to rattle even a giant.
Against the Lakers, the first year that the Celtics won the World Championship with him on the team, and he was ridiculous. He came on here. I remember our sportscaster played the Superman theme when he was talking about him that night after the game, because he did everything, points, rebounds, assists, just steals, you name it. Larry has such a great mind for the game, and a great touch. I had a lot of respect for him as a competitor.
Bernard King was one of the purest scorers the league has ever seen and had battled plenty of greats in his career. But when asked about the toughest, Larry Bird was always top tier.
Messed up, you're guarding me, and then I got to find Birds on the floor to switch over and defend him. And Bird was the toughest player I've ever had to face. You know, the guy is 6'10", I'm 6'7". He can pass over the top of me, put the ball on the floor. He's a great rebounder and obviously a great scorer. And so Bird, for me, was the toughest matchup I ever had during the course of my career.
But if you want to know who truly got the worst of Larry Legend, it was Xavier McDaniel. The X-Man was tough, built to intimidate, built to throw fear into others. But in 1987, Bird flipped the script. He pointed to a spot on the floor, told McDaniel exactly where he was going to shoot from, and then he hit the jumper right in his face.
I get a charge when I tell someone on the opposing team that I'm going to hit the last second shot and then do it. That's what it's all about.
Tie game, 13 seconds to play, Celtics basketball.
During the timeout, I'm going through a play, and about that time, Larry steps in and says, Coach, why don't you just give me the ball and tell everybody to get out of the way? That's Larry. If he wants the ball, he wants the ball. After the timeout, we walked back on the court, and then Xavier was guarding. So he tells Xavier, he says, I'm getting the ball.
That's the thing about Larry Bird. He wasn't just great, he was terrifying. Legends feared him not just because he was the strongest or the fastest,